we're continuing this conversation with the premise that our ancestral practices were circular economies. And we want to be really bold and say that upfront and non-ambiguously. And Kamona's presentation and the panel that followed really deepened that, allowing speakers to come in and share their experience of what a circular economy means to them in action, do some of that translation. This panel in the thinking and the design it's one thing to, I'll start by my kumu, you cannot be general, you gotta be specific and granular. You cannot just make any kind. When we say that our ancestors practiced a circular economy, we specifically think of things like in Ahupua'a was a circular economy. And sometimes you gotta say it, and then you gotta show your work, right? Because that's why we're all in college. So this panel today was really here to talk about our esteemed speakers, our active practitioners in the restoration of Ahupua'a in contemporary times. Another key premise we always want to point to is that it is not enough to refer to our ancestry as our identity. That's super critical. That is a basis of our healing. But we have to understand our ancestry as a viable contemporary practice. That is something you have to finance. And sometimes it's easy to stay in like the hashtag part because you have to do reports on it. But the Arkupuna were incredibly rigorous. They valued rigor and they valued assessing things. That was their whole science. That was the basis of it. So our speakers today are going to talk about the restoration of Ahupua'a in contemporary times. Because it's not enough just to say that we love Alohaina. Our variant, circular economies, our variant of circular economies need to be healthy and practiced for us to make that case. So we have an incredibly esteemed group of speakers, and we, as a Maoli Act, are ranking them not by age, but by age. Quite often, though, growing old was a badass thing in the old days. We didn't have healthcare like we do. If you got old, you were super smart. You learned a lot. We didn't have built-in human obsolescence, right? So humans were our capital. And Uncle Neil Hannes, who is really a catalyst for contemporary Ahupua'a restoration, will be sharing his thoughts. Dr. Sproat, who's Ohana and herself have lived in the Ahupua'a context, will be sharing their work. And we have two incredibly brilliant, Pua'ala and Noah, will be speaking about their contemporary application of these things for you today. So that is the intention of today's conversation. And I'll be lightly moderating. Hello, Uncle.
Yeah, aloha ke akua. Aloha e nā amakua, aloha e nā kupuna e alaka'i mau kākou I ka alapono, aloha e nā pulupula o nei aina, nā kama aina nā kupa, me nā malahini o nei aina nani kamahao. Aloha mai, kākou everybody. Lili Kala, I gotta believe Auntie Gladys and Kekuni and CJ must be just beaming right now to see a summit like this under the leadership of so many University of Hawaii folks. So give them a round of applause for allowing us to stand on their shoulders. It's just awesome, the leadership that's being shown. Bro, I told you we're wearing blue shirt today. You never get the memo. You never get the memo. I think we're almost matching. They told me, come and sit, okay, speak to the history of Ahupua'a recovery and restoration. And it's kind of intimidating because as I look across this room, I see people, scholarship and scholars who've written about and have forgotten more than I'll ever know about that subject. The only benefit I have, an advantage I have, is I was there for a shocking amount of that history. Giving Natalie's brilliant, Natalie, that was awesome, the Mauna. I'm like the atoll of the group. I'm waiting for those fish to come and feed on me. It'll come. But so I'm going to touch on a few points real quickly. I did have some deck, but we're going to get through this deck real quickly because I look around this house, you know this history. I don't need to tell you about the history of Ahupua'a restoration. But I'm just going to highlight a few things from this deck, and I got to kind of stand and see what the slides are doing. The key thing I want to point out is I wanted to give credit on this slide to the Center for Hawaiian Studies. Yeah. Even Paipaioheia The reason that happened, Pai emerged, is because, well, I was trying to hold off and recalibrate where Kamehameha Schools was going to be on that issue. Lily Kalau was running fish pond classes there. And the students who came through the fish pond classes, Hi'ile and Keli'i and Mahina, they became the nucleus that then formed Paipaiʻoheʻeia. So, and I don't know what my main talking points are, but we got to work cross-sectorial. Get out of your swim lane. Kanekoa will tell you, you're not going to win a water polo match if every guy goes in their own lane. You've got to work together. And the way we work together as a land manager, the community, and the your academic programming, that's what we have to do to kind of cross-pollinate and then make something different happen. Okay, so that was number one, and that's a huge thing, and it enabled us to kind of your scholarship at the university enabled us to start to change the narrative and control our own narrative and realize, hey, we was not some beaten up people who needed to be colonized and told how to do things in a different way. Let's see, am I going the right direction? Maybe it's this. I'll just do this. There we go. Was that the next one? Page up. We really should rehearse these things. Okay, so we got through the culture. Oh, I know what. On the brink of extinction, I missed the first slide. That's the thing. To show how far we've come, I hate this quote, but I use it because this is a guy I knew. When I said I was there for the history, I knew this guy, Ed Michael. He was a senior land official manager at the Kamehameha Schools. He worked for Pauahi. And the height of the Kalama Valley discussion and dispute, this is what he said. In today's modern world, the Hawaiian lifestyle should be illegal. Because we've got to move these guys off the land and so that we can develop it, make the money in order to really provide them the educational services that are amplified, for needs that are amplified because we just kicked them off their land. So that's the broken model that at the brink of that extinction, we started to say, when you're up against the wall, and congratulations to the Nihoa Miller bird, who's kind of off the extinction list and fighting back. Maybe we like that bird, and we're fighting back. And there's evidence now that our kupuna had models that really make more sense to us today. It's not just a matter of celebrating antiquity and being proud of our kupuna. It's about using what they knew today. Now, I got to admit, I was part of this generational wave that was really kind of rising and wanting self-determination. And one of our icons was Governor John Wehe. He was an amazing man, and I'm sure many of you know him and have experienced. And we fought through some of those battles. But the key thing I want to point out from this slide was that when you define success by being a master in a system that's oppressing your people, that's not really success. And to be very honest, that was our first view of it. Palaka Power, Governor says, Big Five, government boards and commissions, KS trustees, we're going to be the man. So we'll have the privilege of oppressing our people. It doesn't work. Self-determination doesn't work if you get to the table and you don't change the menu. You got to change the system. And that's what this conference is about, Kamana. Thank you we got to change it. We took some leaps of faith. Waipa, even supporting John Leong and Pono Pacific and all that work that his groups do around the state, reforesting our koa. And to Keli'i's point, you renegades, Keli'i, we're the renegades. You know, this is the way kind of our economy works. When you're an outlier, you're looked at as highly risky. But what risk is it really when the system is broken and it fails every time? An outlier is necessary in order to create change, to create something different that's going to change the certain results of the old system. And that's why, to me, it wasn't a great risk to have Pai guys, Waipa guys, these fledgling enterprises that didn't have a big balance sheet, that didn't have a long track record and so forth. They were trying something different so that we could bust the system that wasn't working. We knew it wasn't working. You just had to look at the fish pond in 1999 and know that. And the community uproar and the pilikia that was going on and people fighting. And they helped change that. They were the outliers, not the renegades. They were the first movers, really. So this is what I really wanted to get to in these slides. And it wouldn't be a university event if somebody didn't appropriate somebody else's knowledge and research. So I want to commend Sean Connolly, after Oceanic is his company, and Consuelo Foundation just supported this amazing research. So you want to know the history of Ahupua'a restoration. This research shows in, I guess it started in 1950, but this is a 1980 stop point. They're about, those little diamonds, triangles, are Aina-based programs, and there were about 19 in 1980. That grows, more than doubles in 1990. Watch the red triangles. And 2000, it gets even more. 2010, 2022. It has grown. Yeah. Give yourselves a round of applause. Give Sean and Consuelo Foundation a round of applause. This is like, I'm not stealing their work, this is a trailer for their work. I think they're going to have some discussion sessions about their work in the new year. So let this be a tease to really go to those things and participate and really help inform that body of research. But that's a tenfold increase. And when you look at it, the trajectory of the growth, it's continuing to growing. It's growing fast. And I was just with Olu Campbell, Hawaiʻi Land Trust. We just closed yesterday on 642 acres in Mahukona, coming under Aina-based management. And we're working with Nakalaiva'a, the canoe folks there, to help be the on-land manager of those assets. So this is growing. This is not going away. The question is, are we going to be satisfied with being that little red lay of adornment on a broken system? That's what this conference has got to get to. We need to change that. We need to become a new economy. And we need to start charting a path, all of you in Aina-based programs, charting a path to exactly how that works. And to the earlier point of, I forget who said it, about we got to change the mindset. You got to change the mindset. You also have to change how capital flows. And that's what Lisa Kleisner and Keone Lee and I are working on in Hawaii Investment Ready. If capital doesn't go to the right economic investments that create a regenerative economy, then it must be going to the old stuff. That's not going to work. We can't accept that. So that's a tee up. Okay, mahalo.
Thank you, Uncle.
I'm going to go back to that.
Yeah.
We'll leave it on that.
Aloha mai kākou.
Aloha.
Can you folks hear me? Yeah. All right. I'm not usually known for being one with a small voice, but I just want to make sure everyone in the back can hear. So mahalo for that vital context, Uncle Neil. I think that's the perfect backdrop for our continued exploration of these contemporary restoration efforts, which I think also just builds on the info that Dr. Beamer shared in his keynote. And what I hope to show this morning is a little bit more on the role of wai and kanawai, actually, in Ahupua'a restoration. Some specifics, but some generalities at the beginning. I think as always, we have to start with our mo'oku auhau, right? And for many of us, and I think has been pointed out time and time again already this morning, the wai aspect is clear. It's a no-brainer, right? Dr. Beamer laid that out. Wai is essential. It's a primary organizer of life. Ola ika wai. It continues to be a vital source of all life for us as people who live on islands in the middle of the Pacific, right? We need that wai, and it continues to play a central role in Ahupua'a restoration. Without wai, there is no wai, no value and no wealth. But it's also the heart, as we saw this morning in the keynote, right, of the ho'okele wai, of the circular economy that we're here to talk about. Because I really believe that it is the foundation, that change that we need. In so many ways, Vai is our koko, right? It's that lifeblood that connects us in all of our systems, our ahupua, our kalana, our moku, from moka to makai. Much of my work for the past couple of decades and our work at Kahuliao Center for Excellence in Native Hawaiian Law and our Native Hawaiian Rights Clinic in particular has focused on Vai. So we are ma'a to the context that Neil shared this morning and that others have talked about, right? Of plantation empire, of cultural renaissance, of the Kon, and all of these efforts to return resources, our natural and cultural resources, to public management and control. And as we're thinking about the genealogy of Ahupua'a restoration, for me, Aloha Aina is a foundation, just in innumerable ways. Of course, that manifests in the direct restoration efforts that we saw, that we've heard about at Waipa, at He'eia, in Kona, and beyond, right? I see, looking across the room this morning, I see so many folks who are doing this work on all of our islands across the Pai'aina. But Aloha Aina also manifests itself at really foundational levels, the values and the kanawai, right, the laws and the legal precepts, which are also grounded in Aloha Aina. That's the key. Historically, for us in these islands, Aloha Aina was more than a value, a political party, even a rallying cry. It was really the foundation of our laws and our governance structures for resource management that are absolute, that were vital and that continue to be vital in our Ahupua'a resource restoration efforts today. So if we talk about innovation, or we're trying to think about innovation, that's where it's at. Like, our people had it dialed, we had it sorted out. Being in a place for a millennia or several millennia has its benefits, right? And it's really this indigenous value system and model that was inscribed. It wasn't just a practice, but it was also inscribed into law during the Hawaiian Kingdom. But it wasn't just something of the past. It remains inscribed in our values today. So we have a constitutional public trust doctrine, Article 11, Section 1, Article 11, Section 7 of our state constitution. It declares our natural and cultural resources are not individual private property. They're stewarded for present and future generations. And the first statute in Hawaii Revised Statute 1-1 adopts English and American common law except as it's modified by Hawaiian custom and tradition and the judicial precedent of the Hawaiian Kingdom. So in Ahupua'a resource management and restoration and in other things, we can, but I would actually say we must look to Aloha Aina in practice and in law. I think as President Lasner and Dr. Beamer already shared, right, this is an opportunity to forge our path going forward by looking back at what we always had. We need to incorporate indigenous science, all our biocultural knowledge in this modern context. And this is even more important in our new climate reality. I would say our climate emergency. I don't know what's happening with the world where David Lasner is laying out for me all the climate impacts and context, but here we are, I'm stoked. But you know, as in the wake of the rain bomb that we endured on Kauai in 2018, and then you know more flooding in 2021, and the wildfires that ravaged Lahaina, that really consumed Lahaina in 2023, Aloha Aina is our answer. And that's really what we need to break us out of this condition of crisis that Dr. Beamer laid out. And I think one reason that we're experiencing not just the types, but the severity of the climate impacts that are manifesting themselves in Hawaii today, the flooding, the wildfires, so much more, it's because for over a century, Aloha Aina has no longer been that foundational value, that legal precept that drives resource management and decisions and policy. Under plantation empire, the wholesale diversion of water, along with invasive species and other issues, complicated, I would say exacerbated, the climate impacts that we're experiencing today. So we are now living with the consequences of decisions that were made a century or two ago. But fortunately for us, Aloha Aina also provides a path forward, right? It's the secret sauce, as President Lasner said, or the pio, right? Both practically in the restoration work that is and must be done and what we're uplifting today. But again, for me, Aloha Aina really has to be the value system that has to be what impacts the policy decisions. And so just very quickly, I'll share one specific example because we don't want to be general. But our Native Hawaiian Rights and Environmental Law clinics from UH Manoa have been dealing with permitting and other challenges in the wake of the 2018 and 2021 flooding that rocked Kauai's North Shore. And I really want to mahalo former council member Mason Chalk, who's here today, because he was a real leader in that whole effort. And what happened there with the current, what we saw is that the current application of law, where you had lo'ikalo systems that had been, dated to the 15th century, where you had ohana that had been, born on the farms that they were currently stewarding, 4th to 6th generation farmers, that even the laws, even Hawaii's progressive public trust paradigm was too narrow because it didn't sufficiently incorporate biocultural knowledge. And it really took decision makers like Dr. Beamer. It's so nice to have so many water commissioners in the room today. I see Michael Buck, and I saw Chair Case earlier, and also Neil Hannes, right? It was really these decision makers that uplifted Aloha Aina, and they were willing to use tools like kalana and incorporate them into contemporary decision making. So on the North Shore of Kauai, we look beyond single ahupua'a, and we look at systems management, right? Especially with respect to our water systems, where you have Waioli Stream actually empties out into Hanalei Bay in the Waipa'a Ahupua'a. So we cannot just look in isolation. We need to look at these whole systems exactly as our ancestors did. And so to me, ultimately, our beloved outcome and the tool to get us there is Aloha Aina. So mahalo.
And I know that we're on a little bit of a truncated timeline because the traffic was really bad today. So the last two speakers to me are going to have to just kalamai. But I do think it's how it is. The ua will make us a little bit late. So it's telling us to slow down. But I do think really both Noa and Pu'ala represent this applied in practice in their work. And even if it is a brief time, I really wanted people of practice, to speak what this looks like on the ground in Ahupua'a. So if we go at Noa and we close at Pu'ala, and Pu'ala, you bat last? That good? Mahalo. Okay. Mahalo, Noa.
I don't know. I think we're done after that. Kamu didn't want the magic to happen. He made us prepare. But yeah, I want to share, I guess, a little bit about agriculture and the university's role in that space. And for me, agriculture is the easiest place to envision circular economies because it's that fundamental interaction with Aina, with environment, right? And environment is cycles, the water cycle, the nutrient cycle, atmospheric cycles. You can't get away from it, right? Tree uplifts nutrients into itself, drops leaves on the ground. That becomes fodder for new systems, microbes, worms. They all power new industry, as you will. And then that goes right back to the tree, uplifted again. Nice cycle. It's not a perfect cycle. Some of that's exported down the Ahupua'a, out to the marine system. That powers another industry. And then it cycles back again. You have the birds, right, eat the fish, come back, kukai on land. And then larger cycles, right, geologic cycles that recycle everything. And this is the concepts, right, that through observation our ancestors based their practices on, was observing natural cycles and adapting to them. And so in agriculture, right, we see agroecological adaptation. You didn't just do anything anywhere, right? There's the right system for the right place that enhance those cycles, that minimize those losses, and then built, again, embedded systems. It's not just one cycle, it's cycles within cycle. And so, you had the right agricultural system at the right place, but you also recognize, it exports down the coast. Then you have your local i'a, will capture those nutrients, will make a new industry. And all of that was then supported by the social structures, right? We talk a lot about the ahupua'a, but that was the middle. It was an important one, but the ili aina, and the the kauhale system was really the basis of managing the individual parcels, the land, embedded within the ahupua'a watersheds and whatnot, embedded within the moku, the ecoregions that kind of define larger scale practices. And all of those are important in terms of how those systems were managed and operated. And so we really try to use that to guide our efforts in terms of thinking about what should agriculture look like in Hawaii today. The current model, right, is very broken, right? We're importing food, we're exporting money, we're exporting our livelihoods at the end of the day. And even in the importation, right, we're supporting systems globally that are broken as well and causing issues in their own areas. Every scientific report, governmental report coming out these days supports this, right? Agriculture, UN just had a report, globally $10 trillion they estimate in waste impacts through agriculture, right? 40% of our greenhouse gas emissions, for the first time in the history of humanity, a shortening lifespan, largely attributed to poor health and nutrition because of our food systems. And so tremendous need, right, to make change and to build more regenerative systems. I'm going to skip forward a little bit because I do really want to say what I see as the role of the university in a lot of this. And first and foremost, I think it's just echoing Papa Neil, but we need to be thought leaders. We need to be bold. We need to be moving the needle in terms of what we're focusing on and the conversations we're having. And as an example, when I started this position and kind of said that breadfruit, ulu, was going to be a core part of my research agenda, I was advised by no less than 2 of my superiors that that's a bad idea. That it's not a commodity crop. That it's not going to support our economy. And if we're only willing to support the status quo, how do we evolve? How do we make change? How do we break out of these cycles? And so, we need to be confident in the values that we know are true and have value. And we're losing opportunities because of that. The Secretary of Agriculture, Vilsack, just gave a keynote presentation a couple weeks ago. All he talked about was circular economies. The NSF is moving into biocultural restoration and things like this. We should be at the forefront of these things, but we're not, because we've suppressed these value systems of our ancestry and our culture, trying to get a seat at the table and not changing the menu. We're playing the same game as everyone else, and we're at that level, we're a small fish in a big pond. And if we don't, break off on our own path and have the confidence that if we go in the right direction, things will follow, and then you're at the front. You're not running and playing catch up. So that's a big one. There's some other things I was going to say, but I just want to emphasize, I guess, the importance of aloha aina, of really taking into account the ecology and the ecosystems in our practices, but also how those social structures align with those things. And oftentimes when we talk about circular economies or ahupua'a restoration, the emphasis is often on the environmental. But I think as we've heard again and again and again today, right, the relationships, the social networks are critical to moving those things forward. And I think in the economy side of things as well, and so some of the initiatives we've been working really closely with, things like the Food Hub Hui, things like the Ulu Co-op are really around building collective social entrepreneurship, social organization that can empower and allow for the operation of communities that then have an economic system to feed into. The Ulu Co-op doesn't try to take credit for anything their farmers do, but the system of the Ulu Co-op allows the farmers to do what they want to do. and not worry about marketing, about trying to find where are they going to sell this, and this. But there's these systems in place they can interact with, they can feed into, and the mahiai then can focus on being a mahiai, and these social structures can focus on supporting them. And so, yeah, I'll stop there because Kamu's looking at his phone and doing stuff. So,
And I think it was really important to bring our last speaker on because Pu'ala Pasquale is like a brilliant person. I have a high level of esteem, and she is trying to do this work in terms of coordinating people who are doing ahupua'a work as a unit, as an accelerator. And what are the best practices if we want to make that leap? How the people that are on the ground that kind of aren't here today, they're doing the work. What is she seeing, and what is needed for this idea to be enacted at scale? So mahalo nui e Pu'ala, calling in from sunny Hilo.
Hello, kako. Mic check.
Aloha.
All right. Aloha from Hawaii Island. Thank you for allowing me to join you virtually. Mahalo to Kamu, Eric, all the behind-the-scenes folks that are making this possible. Really grateful to share this space with many of my valued mentors, esteemed colleagues, and some new faces in the room too. I can't join you today because we are about to welcome a new family member in what feels like any minute now, but really it's sometime soon. So grateful to join you in this way. With the mo'oku auhau acknowledgement, I'm happy to do my best to weave all these beautiful threads that have been placed in front of us together, and happy to assume that role as the poki'i in this space, and I will do my best to close us out. I'm sharing with you today on behalf of a program that I helped to coordinate called the Ahupua'a Accelerator Initiative. It's housed under the Hawaiʻi Conservation Alliance Foundation, and it works with many community partner organizations across the Pai'aina, in addition to a pretty wide network of partners and collaborators who work in different disciplines, different spheres of influence toward realizing ahupua'a restoration outcomes in the present day. The accelerator derives from, but heavily adapts this idea of a business accelerator, where instead of focusing on scaling earned income and revenue, we're really thinking about ways to scale our relationships to one another and to the places that we care about and for, in order to find ways to appropriately accelerate our restoration efforts. Again, all of this is happening in the present day context. And I really liked it, Uncle Neil, when you said, we're not just aiming to celebrate antiquity, but to think about what does it look like to apply that ikepili in the present day context. Realistically, we can have goals and aspirations focused on hulihia, returns of massive swaths of ancestral lands to our Native Hawaiian communities. But at the same time, I think it's meaningful to look at ways to chip away at that from different angles, in different ways, together with different sectors, in ways that are value aligned for our local communities, but also ways that align with our Ike Ku'una Hawaii and how we go about applying those things in practice. I'm happy to hear that, like a minute ago, I heard that we have some partners and collaborators in the room who work with the accelerator program. He'eia is there, Ha'ena is there. And these guys are exploring some really meaningful co-stewardship, co-management arrangements in practice. For example, nonprofit vendor agreements and arrangements that allow longer stewardship of areas like state parks in a way that dictates the flow of resources to rural community organizations, predominantly Native Hawaiian-led organizations. I also heard on the preceding panel that it's a need to grow our Native Hawaiian community vendors who are actively employment to do malama'aina work. One of the things that the accelerator works on is trying to identify the enabling conditions that allow for those things to happen. Yes, we need to see it so that we can start walking toward it. But what are these things that we need to check along the way? Do we have the capacity building, organizational and technical? Do we have the insurance requirements? What kind of insurance do you need if you're running a chainsaw on a 45-foot pole? These are the types of things in practice that there are a growing number of practitioner communities who are walking through this, I don't want to say uncharted, but maybe contemporary uncharted territory together. trying to share and compare lived experience in navigating the present day landscape of what it takes to do contemporary restoration of ahupua'a. I'll go to a next slide if it allows me to do so, just to let you know that one of the things our program has worked on is compiling this suite of priority actions in ahupua'a stewardship and restoration that are envisioned to really serve as a collective lift to get us where we want to be. It is the articulation of different needs that practitioners have voiced. These are immediate accelerator partners and others with whom we work in this space. And we really envision this action agenda as a way to convene and deploy resources, diverse forms of capital to achieve our shared goals in ahupua'a restoration. Two closing points, and I'll wrap up, is one, I heard a really clear call on wanting to really center, very clearly articulate place-focused, community and culturally centered determinants of success. And I think that one of my colleagues in the room actually made the great point that the real vai-vai, the real flex is time, and creating that intentional time and space to work on these ideas, to work with our community partners to clearly articulate what are those determinants of success, and then using those to chart how we convene and deploy resources. I think it's absolutely critical. Finally, to try and pull in some of what Noah was sharing in terms of the agricultural space, I think in the diverse fields, diverse places we work, it's really important to be confident in our ancestral competence, confident in our ancestral competences, if you will, and thinking about ways to, again, explore things like a business accelerator in a way that is value aligned with the different approaches, the different tools and techniques that have been passed on to us from our kupuna, from many of you in the room who have worked on these things for decades, if not lifetimes. And I'm grateful again to share this space with you, and I'll close with that idea and gently pass back to Kamu. Mahalo nui kākou.
Mahalo kākou. So we appreciate our panel. The reason why we're closing, because we're moving to international speakers who are calling in from London. But to me, the importance of this panel was, like our kupuna, I think a lot of Kalakaua, he was very unabashedly Hawaiian and very unabashedly international, and that we don't have to diminish ourselves. I think we don't have to overexert ourselves and become a new force of, like domination, but that we are enough, that we are good enough, and we can learn these things and heal these spaces. And I hope that these two panels that are started today, they talked about who we were and what is this idea of circular economies, but what was one of our many, many variants of a circular economy understood. So when we go into international conversations, we're not going hand in hand, and I appreciate Vasilis's leadership. We should, this is the university's annual research summit. This isn't a sidebar. We are centering this claim that we are sufficient and we can bring these things to global conversations with our communities as experts. And the university is holding that space. So I deeply appreciate our esteemed panel and a panel from afar today. And we want to close this part of the summit and move it over to our international speakers. We're calling in from England, amongst other places, and transition over. So mahalo, and that's what we can, and also this is our first conversation. This isn't the last. We're building out centers so we can have questions a little bit later towards the end, but we want to honor the time constraints we're working under. So mahalo kākou. Thank you, Uncle.